Welcome to part 3 of the course for trueSpace for Illustrators. In this particular tutorial we're going to have a look at lighting within trueSpace. Now, we modeled this bottle rather large, so the first thing we're going to do is scale it down to a more workable size within trueSpace. We'll try and move this towards the center of our scene, and we want to place it exactly on the ground plane, so we'll open up our collision detection tools and set the object to collide with the ground plane. This allows us to move the object down so it rests exactly on the ground plane. Turning our collision off, let's adjust our view a little. And what we want to do now is introduce you to the camera object in trueSpace. It's a very handy object, and we'll place a camera object in the scene and sort of point it towards our bottle. And you can move this camera around, rotate it, adjust it just as if it was any other object, but it is an invisible object within trueSpace. Opening up a second viewpoint, we can set that to render the view from the camera object, and this allows us to do some adjustments to the camera itself, but we can also select our preview window here and make fine-tune adjustments as well. So as you become familiar with trueSpace, this process here of learning what perspective to shoot the object at, what perspective will work best, that'll all come to you in time as you familiarize yourself with these tools. But at this point in time, it's important for you to note that they are there and they are available, and there will be a little bit of legwork involved for you to become familiar. So there we sort of have our camera object set up. We'll just do a fine-tune adjustment on the zoom here and do a quick render to show you how it looks. As you can see, we have too much light in, our label is washed out. So let's set this up and open up our light library. You have a light library in trueSpace. It comes accompanied with all these assortment of different lighting scenarios. The one we want right at the moment is called None, which effectively removes all the lights from within the scene. And let's do a quick render here so you can understand that objects themselves can present light. So even though we can see this object in a render, there are no lights in the scene. So let's bring in a single local light, and let's have a look at some of the properties that are available on this light panel. Of course, we can move the light around as if it was an object, and in real time you sort of get an indication as to when your light is close to being where you want by the light that it's casting. So again, adjusting the intensity via slider, we can see how the light is showing itself on the object as we tweak our settings. So again, via slider, via numerical input, here's shadows, very important part. Two types, either ray or map. The shadow transparency, we're going to want to have transparent shadows, so we'll set them for that. If you were to use map, there's some settings there to allow for quality. Here's the light fall off, whether there will be no fall off as the light progresses over distance, whether there'll be a linear fall off, or as we'll use here, the squared fall off. So the light loses its intensity as it travels. It's more accurate. And again, here's the influence of the light, so we can adjust that so it encompasses our object. Again, this will take a little bit of legwork. We can adjust the color of the light, and again, in real time it'll show up. For our purposes, we just need a plain white light. So now with a single light in the scene, you see a little different rendering. Still, there seems to be a lack of light, so let's bring in a specialty light into our scenario. But first we'll bring in a ground plane, which will give something for our shadows to fall on. Again, here now we'll see it even more so, where the plane has added a darkness to the scene and it's washing out parts of the bottle And although we see a shadow, it's not very indicative of what we're doing in the scene, so we'll add a second light. Very interesting light called an image-based light, IBL for short. And what happens with this type of light is it's based on an image. So let's adjust this so it pretty much encompasses our plane object. And we'll open up our image browser and select a image that has a little bit of light in it, and that's going to become used by the LBL to cast light within the scene itself. So we'll make a couple of fine adjustments on our image-based light and get it to a point where we're going to be happy with it. And again, we'll do a render now showing the fruits of our labor with the LBL and the local light. Now you can see we've added a dimension of light into the scene. We're getting a nice shadow showing up in the background behind the bottle on the plane. And of course we have two lights. So a few final adjustments to where the camera is going to view the object. Let's grab a hold of our local light and we'll just move it up a little bit in the scene. Get it to change the way it's casting shadows on the plane. And then we'll select our camera object and arrange for our main view to look at the scenario from the camera's object. Do a little bit of tweaking here on the position. And we'll give you a final render now of this scene set up with the local light and the LBL light. Now as you can see, there's some highlights showing up in the glass. The liquid is playing with the color of the glass. It's also throwing shadows around, so the glass itself is creating shadows inside. The liquid is having an effect on that as well. Our local light and our image-based light are both throwing shadows into this scenario as well. You can see some nice highlights showing up in the glass and the bottle itself. So all the contouring, all the organic shaping that we did in the first part of our tutorial, you're seeing the results here, and it looks like a very, very pristine bottle. Very elegant. And now as we begin to see some of the shadows falling on the plane object, we begin to see some of the complexities that are available within trueSpace. Here you can see some color showing up in the shadow. You can see how pristine and sharp the shadows are. Again, the label has come up the way we would like. It's not washed out. The bottle's not washed out. So again, a little bit of legwork on your part is going to help to create the scene and the ambience within the scene, to a state that you want. And when you do get to a state that you do want, trueSpace has the ability through its lighting library to allow you to save this particular setup, minus the objects in the scene itself, but essentially it'll save all of the settings for the LBL and the local light, all the transparency for the shadows. So let's open up the light library and actually create a new light library. Insert our current lighting scenario and give it a name. So the ability to rename is important. Let's give the library itself a name and then save it. So there you have it, lighting within trueSpace. Very powerful and very pristine set of lighting tools. And we'll see you in the next part of the tutorial series.